The wind was dry and sharp, blowing dust into every crack and corner of the broken planet's surface. Jacob pulled his scarf tighter over his mouth and kept walking. Boots crunching across sand and shattered metal. His scanner blinked a soft blue. It had picked up movement, but only for a second. It could be nothing. Maybe a rodent, maybe another trap. Still, he followed it. The remains of an old trader's wagon lay ahead, burned and split open. Wheels snapped in half like broken bones. Jacob moved carefully, hand resting on the small laser pistol at his side. He saw no one, just the wreckage. A few crates, some wires hanging loose like dry vines. Then he heard a cough, weak and dry, like someone too tired to breathe. He stopped, eyes scanning the ruins again. Then he saw her, a small figure, curled up under a half-bent metal plate, covered in dust. Her skin was light purple, her hair silver and messy, sticking to her face. She looked no older than 6, maybe 7. She wasn't human. Jacob took a slow step forward, careful not to startle her. The girl's eyes opened bright violet, wide with fear. She tried to scoot back, but she was too weak to move much. Her lips were cracked, and her tiny hands gripped the sand like it could save her. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jacob said softly. Lowering his pistol, he knelt down and pulled out his water pouch, holding it out toward her. She stared at it, not understanding, then looked at him again, her body shaking. After a moment, she reached out slowly and took the pouch with both hands. She drank like she hadn't tasted water in days. Jacob let her drink, watching her carefully. She was alien, yes, but not dangerous, not like the raiders or bounty hunters that roamed this wasteland. She was just a child, lost and scared. He offered her a protein bar next, and she took it without question, eating quickly. Bits of dust stuck to her cheeks and lips, but she didn't care. Jacob sat beside her, letting her eat in silence. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked up, blinked slowly, then pointed to her chest and said one soft word, "Liara." Jacob nodded. "All right, Liara," he said. "Where's your family? Are they close?" Her eyes dropped, and she shook her head. A tear slid down one dusty cheek. Jacob felt something tighten in his chest. This wasn't part of his plan. He was a salvager, not a babysitter, not a father. But he couldn't just leave her here. He stood up and offered her his hand. She stared at it, unsure, then slowly she reached up and took it. He lifted her gently and wrapped his old cloak around her small frame. She was lighter than she looked, too light, too thin. He looked around one last time, but there were no tracks, no voices, no signs of anyone else. Just wind and sand as they walked back toward his rover. Liara held tight to his sleeve, not saying a word. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't ask who he was. She just followed, back at the rover. Jacob helped her inside and gave her another drink. The rover systems scanned her automatically. Alien species detected no known threats. Malnourished, dehydrated, injured, minor burns and bruises. "Who left you out there?" he whispered to himself, shaking his head. He looked at her again, curled up in the passenger seat now, eyes half closed. She looked safe for the first time since he found her. But Jacob had lived long enough to know nothing stayed safe for long, not out here. He started the engine and turned the rover toward his shelter. A small outpost buried under rock and metal, far from any city. As the vehicle moved forward, Liara reached out and gently held his hand. Jacob looked at her small fingers wrapped around his glove, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He didn't know where she came from. He didn't know why she was left behind. But something told him whoever had done this to her wasn't finished yet, and they might be coming back. Jacob woke up with a sharp chill running down his spine. Something was wrong. His shelter was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no hum from the solar panels. Number night creatures scratching at the walls, just stillness. He sat up quickly. Reaching for his rifle, the small alien girl, Liara, was curled beside the heater, wrapped in his spare jacket, fast asleep. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the soft light, her breath slow and calm. She was fine. But the silence outside still felt wrong. Jacob moved to the door and pressed the panel. Slowly opening the heavy metal hatch, the cold wind blew in, carrying dry sand and the scent of something unfamiliar. He stepped out and looked around carefully. Then he saw them tracks in the sand, just a few meters from the door. Fresh, deep, heavy steps. Not human, not his 3-clawed footprints. Large and wide, circling the shelter and then vanishing into the rocks. Someone or something had been watching them during the night. Jacob's heart pounded. He crouched and traced the marks with his fingers. Too clean for raiders, too quiet for wild animals. This was hunting behavior. He went back inside and checked the monitors. Nothing on. The motion sensors, whoever it was, they were careful. Trained. Dangerous. He looked at Liara again, now waking up and rubbing her eyes. "Did you hear anything last night?" he asked softly. She blinked, then shook her head. But when he showed her the footprints on the screen, her expression changed. Her eyes widened, and she backed away from the monitor like it might burn her. She pointed at the tracks and said one word, her voice low and trembling. "Hunters." Jacob knelt in front of her. "What kind of hunters? Who are they?" Liara didn't have many words, but she looked up and tapped her own chest. Then pointed outside, then held up 2 fingers, crossed them, and made a snapping motion. Her meaning was clear there after her. And they break anything in there. Way. Jacob stood up, now pacing, thinking fast. He wasn't prepared for this. His shelter was hidden and tough. But it couldn't survive a full attack, and Liaroshi was just a child, alien or not. She didn't deserve to be hunted like prey. He packed a bag emergency food, water, signal flares, energy cells, medkit, tools. Then turned to Liara and held out his hand. "We can't stay here," he said. "We have to move." She hesitated for only a moment before nodding and slipping her tiny hand into his again. They left through the rear exit tunnel, a narrow cave system Jacob had dug years ago for emergencies. It led through rock and shadow, away from open land. As they moved, the little girl suddenly stopped and touched the wall. Jacob watched as her fingers glowed faintly against the stone, like they were searching for something inside it. The wall shimmered for a second, revealing hidden alien symbols, just a flash, then gone again. Jacob stared, stunned. "What did you do?" Liara shook her head and whispered, "Memory?" He didn't understand it fully. But one thing was now clear. This girl wasn't just any lost child. She was something more, something ancient, maybe even powerful. And someone out there wanted to erase her before anyone else could find out who she really was. They reached a ridge and climbed up, the sky above them now filled with faint stars and streaks of distant ships. Jacob pulled out his old binoculars and scanned the valley behind them. A black shadow moved across the dunes, too fast for a beast, too quiet for a machine. They were being followed. He turned to Liara. "We need to keep moving." But the girl wasn't looking at the sky. She was staring down at the sand ahead. Her body tense, Jacob followed her gaze. There, just ahead, another set of tracks, smaller this time, bare feet, like hers, fresh, another child. Jacob gripped his rifle, scanning every direction, no one in sight. Yet Liara suddenly rushed forward, calling something in her alien tongue. Jacob chased after her, heart racing, and then, in the shadow of a large rock, a second figure stepped out, taller, older, with glowing violet eyes. Her face was sharp, elegant. Her hair long and pale like Leora's. She wore torn robes and carried a staff made of crystal and bone. She stared at Jacob, her eyes full of exhaustion and fire. "Where is my daughter?" she asked in perfect English, her voice shaking with power. The staff in her hand shimmered faintly, humming like it was alive. Jacob didn't raise his weapon. He couldn't. Not when the woman standing before him had the same eyes as the little girl clinging behind his leg. Liara peeked from behind. Her small fingers holding tight to his belt. Then, in a soft gasp, she whispered, "Amma." The woman's eyes flickered, pain flashing across her face. She dropped to her knees in the sand, arms open, lips trembling. "Liara. My star, my baby." But the girl didn't move. She stayed behind Jacob, afraid. Jacob slowly stepped aside. Unsure if this was a trick or a reunion, he kept his eyes locked on the woman's, watching for any sudden move, but the woman only sobbed, reaching out her arms as Liara finally ran into them. Their hug was silent, but full of something ancient: grief, reunion, love, and something else Jacob didn't yet understand. When they pulled apart, the woman looked at Jacob again. "You helped her," she said, voice soft but sharp like glass. "Why?" Jacob blinked, unsure how to answer. "She was alone," he said, "starving. Scared I couldn't leave her." The woman nodded slowly, then stood. "I am Soraya, daughter of House Thalvin," she said. "Exiled royal. Hunted traitor." "And her mother?" Jacob nodded. "Still alert? Who's hunting you?" Her eyes turned toward the hills behind them, where dust swirled in the distance. "They are not men," she whispered. "They are collectors. Sent to wipe bloodlines and erase names from history." Jacob didn't fully understand, but the threat felt real enough. Liara wrapped her arms around her mother's waist and looked up at her. "Stay?" Soraya hesitated, then looked at Jacob. "I did not come for her alone," she said. "I came for you too." Jacob stiffened. "Me? She chose you," Soraya said. "She trusted you. And that means something." Before he could respond, Soraya suddenly leaned forward, placing her hand over Liara's chest. The staff beside her pulsed blue, and Jacob felt something shift in the air like pressure, like time pausing. Then Soraya said in a deep, low tone, "They will arrive by nightfall." "How do you know that?" Jacob asked, but Soraya's face had gone pale. "They marked her long ago," she said. "They can track her through the bond, but they cannot feel her now." "What bond?" he asked. Soraya looked at him for a long moment, then answered, "In my world, when a child is saved from death by a stranger, their soul links, even if the stranger does not know." She stepped closer to Jacob, her violet eyes burning. "She is yours now, not just by accident, but by fate." Jacob took a step back, confused, overwhelmed. "I just gave her water, a coat. What do you mean fate?" Soraya smiled sadly. "You think that's all you did? You gave her hope." She paused, then added, "And now they will come for all of us." Jacob clenched his fists, looking out at the growing storm in the horizon. Dust clouds spun like angry waves, and faint lights blinked through them. Hunters, ships, machines maybe. He didn't have long. "Then we run," he said. "There's a ravine to the north, old mining tunnels, deep, safe, no sensors can see inside." Soraya nodded, but her eyes were still locked on him. "Once we hide, I need to show you something," she said. Something only she was meant to carry, but now must be shared with you. "What is it?" he asked. Soraya glanced down at her daughter, then whispered, "The reason she was born." Jacob said nothing more, just turned, holding Liara's hand, while Soraya followed behind, staff humming low and steady. As the three of them moved through the rocky path, the desert wind howled louder, like it was warning them of what was coming. They didn't speak again until night fell. By then, the stars were gone, hidden behind black ships that circled above, and the hunters had found their scent again. The night sky wasn't quiet anymore. It growled. Jacob looked up as a deep rumble rolled through the clouds, low, heavy, and unnatural. The stars were gone, swallowed by thick shadows moving like silent predators above. He gripped his rifle tighter, standing just inside the tunnel mouth, trying not to show fear. Behind him, Liara slept curled against her mother's side. Saraya's eyes were open, glowing faintly in the dark, her staff resting across her lap like a sword ready to strike. She didn't blink, didn't move, like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. "They're here, aren't they?" Jacob asked. Saraya nodded once. They followed the memory trails. She whispered, her heartbeat, her dreams, even her scent in the sand. Jacob looked back at the cave tunnel, where flickering lights lined the wall's old tech, half broken. "From age and dust, this place is deep enough," he said. "They won't find us fast." "They don't need fast," Saraya replied. "They just need patience. And they have centuries of it." Outside, the sound changed now, a strange chirping, like metal claws tapping glass. Then a loud thump shook the ground. Then another, closer. Jacob peeked out and saw a tall figure drop from the air, landing silently in the sand, 7 feet tall, armored in black bone-like plating, its head narrow with no visible eyes. Just a red circle pulsing on its chest like a heartbeat. Then a second figure dropped beside it, then a third. "They brought seekers," Saraya said, her voice trembling for the first time. "Machines grown from living minds. They don't stop, not until the target stops breathing." Jacob had no plan for this, not against hunters from alien nightmares. He turned to her, voice low. "Then we don't breathe near them, we run." But Liara stirred in her sleep, her head twitching side to side like she was dreaming something painful. Then she let out a small cry, "Papa, no." Saraya was already moving. She placed her hand over Liara's forehead, her fingers glowing blue, calming her. "She feels them," she said, "their hate, their hunger. They burn inside her mind." Jacob looked at the child, at how fragile she seemed, and then he looked at the tunnel walls around him. Not strong enough, not long enough, not safe enough, not anymore. He pulled open the old power panel beside the tunnel door and flipped a hidden switch. A red light blinked, and gears spun below. Escape shaft lit up behind them, narrow but deep. Only one could fit at a time. "Take her," Jacob said. "You go first." Saraya frowned. "What about you?" "I'll hold them off," he said. "By time, that's all." She studied him for a second longer, then nodded, lifting Liara gently in her arms. "Do not die, Jacob," she said. "She needs you more than I ever did." He watched as they disappeared into the shaft, the door closing behind them with a slow hiss. The moment they vanished, he turned back and stepped outside. The seekers were only 20 feet away now, scanning the sand with strange metal rods that glowed red at the tips. Jacob raised his rifle, aimed, and took a deep breath. "Hey," he said loud, "you want something? Come and get it." The red dots on their chests turned toward him all at once. The first seeker lunged. Jacob fired the energy bolt, hit its chest, but bounced off. Just sparks. He dove aside as a razor-sharp limb sliced through the air. Cutting the cave wall like butter, he rolled, pulled out a flare, and threw it straight into one of their faces. Bright light burst, blinding them for a second. He ran back into the tunnels, back toward the deeper system he hadn't used in years. Behind him, the screeches of the seekers echoed, loud and metallic like breaking bones. They were faster, stronger, smarter. He was just a human with a gun and a little anger. But sometimes that was enough. He reached the inner vault, where a metal door sealed shut, and turned to face the path he came from. His breathing was heavy, but his hands were steady now. No more running. If they wanted Liara, they'd have to get through him first, and Jacob never made anything easy. The only sound was dripping water, echoing through the stone. Sierra sat in the cave's deepest chamber, her cloak pulled tightly around Leora's sleeping body. The girl's head rested on her mother's lap, her breathing soft, now calm for the first time in days, but Soraya was not calm. Her eyes stayed fixed on the passage behind them, waiting for any sound, any shadow. Jacob hadn't returned. She tried to stay strong, but her grip on her staff had gone weak. The glow was fading. Then footsteps. Heavy, dragging, and real, she stood quickly. Staff raised, ready to fight. A figure stumbled into the cave, covered in dirt. Armor scratched and blackened. Jacob, he coughed, dropped his weapon and collapsed beside the wall, breathing hard. There. Not following, he gasped. Blocked the path behind me. Cave sealed now. Soraya ran to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. Checking for wounds, he was hurt. Yes, but alive burns along one arm. Bruises on his side, a cut above the brow, but his eyes were clear. You came back, she whispered. He gave a tired smile, didn't plan on staying dead. She looked at him for a long moment, then helped him sit against the wall for the first time. Her face softened completely, not as a warrior, not as royalty, but as a mother. And a woman tired of running. She dreamed of you, Soraya said suddenly. Even before she saw you. Jacob blinked, confused. What do you mean? She used to wake up crying, saying your name, she said. Not the word Papa. Your real name, Jacob? He stared at her, stunned. But how? She didn't know me. Soraya touched the crystal at the end of her staff, and it pulsed softly. Our kind. We see fragments of what could be in our children's dreams, she said. Sometimes we ignore them, call them nonsense. She looked down at Liara, still sleeping soundly in the glow. But I should have listened. Jacob said nothing for a moment, just watched the little girl who had completely changed his life in days. I didn't do much, he finally said. I just didn't walk away. That's everything, Soraya replied quietly. Others saw her and did nothing. Then, her voice dropped to a whisper, almost like she was afraid of her own words. I want to ask you something. Jacob looked at her. Go ahead, she hesitated, then spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. In my world, when someone saves a child, when they risk their life for them, that person becomes more than a guardian. They become family, not by law, but by bond. Jacob nodded slowly. You told me that before. I didn't really understand it then. Soraya moved closer now, sitting beside him, their shoulders nearly touching. She calls you Papa now, she said, not because I told her, but because her soul has chosen you. Jacob swallowed hard, emotions rising inside him. I didn't expect any of this, he said. I was just alone, trying to survive. She smiled gently, eyes shining in the soft cave light. So was I then? In a voice barely above a whisper, she added, if we live through this, I want you to stay. Jacob turned to her slowly, surprised. You mean? With you? With us, she said. Not just as a protector, not as a visitor, but as part of something. He looked at her face, at the sadness behind her strength, the exhaustion hidden behind royal pride. She had lost everything, her world, her home, her people. But she was offering him a place beside her now. In what little they had left. I don't know what kind of future I can give, Jacob said. But she wants me, and you trust me. Soraya reached out and took his hand. She already chose you, she whispered. Now I just need to know if you'll choose us back. He held her gaze for a long, quiet moment, and then, softly, he squeezed her hand. I already did, he said. They sat in silence as Liara stirred, waking up and rubbing her eyes. She looked between them, then gave a sleepy smile. Family? She asked, her voice hopeful. Jacob nodded and opened his arms. Liara ran into them. wrapping her arms around his neck, laughing for the first time since he met her. And somewhere deep in the rock above, the sound of falling stones echoed a warning. The hunters weren't finished yet, but this time, they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for a future, if we die tonight. Soraya said softly, I want to die as your mate, not as your burden. Jacob froze, unsure if he'd heard her right. The cave flickered with the dim blue glow from her staff, but her eyes, those bright violet eyes, were locked on his. Serious, calm, and waiting, he stood near the tunnel wall, weapon across his back, but her words had hit harder than any weapon ever could. What? He asked, almost breathless. Sierra took a slow step closer, her voice steady but full of hidden pain. In my world, if death is near, we don't wait to speak the truth. She paused, then added, I've watched you. How you carry her, how you shield her. Even how you speak to me. Jacob looked down at his hands, the ones still scarred from sealing off the tunnels. I'm no hero, he said. I just couldn't leave her behind. And that, Soraya said gently, makes you the strongest man I've ever known. She came closer now, so close he could feel her warmth, even in the cave's cold air. I don't want to survive this and walk into the stars alone. She whispered, I want my daughter to grow up with a father who fights for her. Jacob glanced over to Liara, who was curled up on a pile of cloth, humming softly in her sleep. He had grown attached far more than he'd ever planned. But now it was more than just feelings. Soraya was offering him something ancient, something sacred from her world. She was offering him bonding, not just a kiss, not romance, not ceremony, but the complete joining of two lives, hers, his and Liara's. He stepped back, still shocked. Syria. You don't even know who I really am? She smiled. Just a little, you think saving a child doesn't tell me everything about a man. She reached out and gently touched his cheek. You didn't ask for reward or answers. You just gave. Outside, the rock above rumbled again. Dust falling from the ceiling. The hunters were back, pounding the cliffs from above, searching for cracks in the cave system. Time was running out. We can't do this now, Jacob said. We need to survive. I know, Soraya nodded. But I had to speak before it's too late. He took a deep breath, then gave her a quiet answer. I'm not from your world, Soraya, but if there's a way to stand beside you, I'll find it. Her eyes lit with a soft light, not magic, just relief, just warmth. That is enough, she said. For now, suddenly, Liara sat up, gasping, her hands glowing blue. Jacob and Soraya rushed over as the girl pointed to the tunnel wall, her voice shaky. They're here, below. Soraya's staff lit up instantly, revealing symbols on the cave floor. Jacob, she said quickly, help me open the vault beneath us. What vault? He asked. Her birthright, Soraya replied. The reason they're hunting her, together, they dragged the heavy stone aside. Revealing a round hatch buried in the ground, Soraya placed her hand on the crystal in. Her staff pulsed, and the hatch slid open with a loud hiss. Inside was something Jacob didn't expect. A pod. Silver and clear, holding a sphere of light hovering in the center. It pulsed like a living heart, glowing brighter with each beat. What is that? Jacob asked. Soraya's voice was calm but heavy. It's called the Soul Core. It holds the voice of a lost planet, my home. Liara stepped beside them, eyes wide. It called me. Soraya turned to Jacob, serious again. The only way to protect her now is to awaken what sleeps in that core. What happens if we do? He asked. War, she said. But also freedom. Jacob looked down at Liara, then up at the core. He thought of the men who hurt her, of the creatures who hunted her, and of the family they had all built in these few fragile days. He reached toward the sphere, his fingers trembling as they touched the light. It didn't burn. Instead, it welcomed him. The cave glowed brighter, walls humming. The ground shaking harder now, not from hunters this time, but from something waking up deep beneath their feet. Syria grabbed his arm. Once it begins, Jacob, there's no going back. He looked at her, heart pounding. I don't want to go back, he said. Not if it means losing either of you. And with that, the soul core pulsed one sand. The mountain began to rise. The mountain wasn't still anymore. It was alive. Stone cracked and shifted as glowing lines of energy spread across the ground like rivers of light. From deep below, a sound rose ancient, low, and full of memory. It wasn't just noise. It was a voice speaking in a language older than stars. Jacob stood at the center of it all, his hands still touching the soul core. Liara clung to his side, eyes wide with wonder and fear. Soraya stood behind them, staff raised, her cloak whipping. In the rising wind, it's answering, she whispered. It's choosing. The core pulsed again, brighter this time, and sent a soft beam of light into Liara's chest. She gasped but didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped forward. As if guided by something inside her soul, the ground shook harder, and the cave split open above them for the first time. The sky was clear, and the stars watched in silence. Above, the hunter ships hovered in a wide circle, ready to strike. But something had changed. They didn't fire, they waited, unsure now. Hesitant, from the core, a column of light shot into the air, reaching into orbit. And far beyond the system, something responded. A dormant beacon in space lit up for the first time in 1,000 years. Sira gasped, her knees giving way. It worked, she said, tears falling freely. Her blood woke the seed. The last piece of our home. Jacob moved to help her up. What now? He asked. What does this mean? It means, Soraya said, looking up at him, our world isn't dead anymore. And neither is her future. The hunter ships above began to scatter. Breaking formation, some turning back, some simply hovering watching. They had failed. The girl they were ordered to erase had become a beacon, a living call across galaxies. Suddenly, a voice came through Jacob's comlink, a frequency he hadn't used in years. Unknown core detected. Signal received by Allied fleet. Respond immediately. Identity required. Jacob raised a cum to his mouth, heart pounding. This is Jacob West, he said, civilian. Protector of Liara Thalvin. He paused, then added, and mate to Soraya. Her mother, silence. Followed then a new voice came through. Stronger, more official, understood, Guardian Jacob. Planetary claim recognized under galactic protection laws. We are en route. Jacob turned to Soraya, who looked like she hadn't breathed in years. You just bought us a future, she whispered. He knelt beside Liara, placing a hand on her shoulder. She looked up, tears in her eyes, smiling, Papa. No more running. He pulled her into his arms. No more running. For the first time in days, there was peace. Not just silence, but peace. No guns, no screams, no monsters in the dark. Just 3 souls sitting beside a glowing heart of a forgotten world together. Hours passed, and the light faded back into the earth. The core sealed itself again, silent but safe, waiting for the day it would grow again into something larger. Something that could rebuild the stars it came from. Later that night, as Jacob sat beside the fire with Soraya and Liara asleep in his arms, a small shuttle landed nearby. It wasn't a warship, not a threat, just an envoy, bearing the seal of peace. They stepped out slowly, cautiously, as if not wanting to disturb what they found. One of them, a soft-spoken alien diplomat, approached Jacob and said, "We received the signal, but we did not expect to find family guarding it." Jacob stood tall, holding Liara close. "You'll find I guard what matters most," he replied. They offered supplies, protection, and restoration. But Jacob only asked for one thing: time. Time to build, time to heal, time to finally live. Weeks later, green began to grow again in the valley where they stayed, and in the mornings, the child who was once lost in the dust ran freely, laughing, not as a target, but as a daughter, loved, safe, and home, and her mother. She no longer stood alone. Under the stars, she stood beside a human, hand in hand. A man who was never meant to be a father or a hero, but became both, because he didn't walk away from a little girl in the dust.